Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Simon Beardsley, and I'm the Chief Executive of Lincolnshire Chamber of Commerce. A little bit of housekeeping for a start, if I may. Would it be possible for you to just have a look at your microphones and just make sure that they're switched to mute? And if you'll just make sure they are done so throughout the session, but just make sure that there's no distracting noises that come across the speakers during this particular session. Just to make you aware, if you have got a question, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat box. So along the bottom of the Zoom platform, you'll find a part that says chat. If you click on it, it will open up a box, and then you can type any questions into there. These sessions really are brought alive by the questions that you bring to them. So please don't hesitate to put some questions in there, and we will endeavour to answer those as we go through the session. Just to make you aware that this session is being recorded today, it will be uploaded onto YouTube or our website or our website, so that you can watch it back or you can share parts with colleagues as well. Today's webinar is part of our ChamberConnect series, which started now a little over a year ago, March 2020. At that time, it was set up to help local businesses and their people during the pandemic and beyond. And who'd really think that, or have thought that some year later, we'd be here in very similar situations to where we were last year as well. Absolutely amazing in terms of that. If you're interested in some more of this type of events, please have a look at our website, www.links-chamber.co.uk, with the whole selection of these ChamberConnect type webinars that are available for you to look at or participate in as well. So today we'll be hearing from Oliver Tasker. Oliver is a partner at Wilkin Chapman. Over the past year, Oliver has delivered several webinars around employment law for us, covering everything from the very first announcement of furlough to the other business support to where we are now. Today, Oliver will be discussing a number of topics around employment and current issues facing businesses, including COVID-related problems such as vaccine issues, employees breaking safety rules, and a close look at what was said during the budget and what this will mean in business terms. That's enough from me at this particular point. I'd like to introduce you to Oliver. So Oliver, are you there?
I am. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Good. Yeah, thanks, Simon. And thanks again for inviting me to speak for the Chamber as part of the ChamberConnect. As you said just then, little did we think that year on down the line that probably I'd still be speaking, we'll still be doing Zoom events, ChamberConnect events, and really advising businesses on the ongoing impact of COVID, and still probably mentioning something called furlough and the job retention scheme as well, which we'll get at the customary mention shortly. But as Simon said, I'm a partner of Wilkin Chapman Solicitors. I specialise in employment law and HR, and I lead the team at the Lincoln office. And really, we continue to be as busy as we have been throughout the last year in the employment world on advice and helping businesses, both predominantly locally, but also around the UK as well. And throughout the last year, we've seen it shift from furlough, the job retention scheme, some redundancies, and now really we're hopefully and helpfully advising businesses on the plans to return to the workplace and the implications that that may have with employees, and really what businesses need to be doing, what they need to be aware of in planning for that. So we'll come to that a little later on. So as Simon said, really the purposes of today is to provide an update on what we're seeing our clients ask in terms of questions at the moment that are on their agenda, and really how we're helping clients as we all hopefully head down the roadmap that Boris has set out to recovery. So back to you, Simon.
Thanks, Oliver. I wonder if we could start on the budget announcements, and if you can cover some of the highlights from there for a start, please.
Yeah, I'll briefly touch upon the budget announcement that we saw from the Chancellor Rishi a couple of weeks ago. Really, the main one in the employment world for businesses was the extension of the coronavirus job retention scheme and the extension of furlough up until the end of September, which has given businesses more certainty in terms of planning. It's certainly pushed back any wave of redundancies that were forecast by a lot of people, the Bank of England, the national statistics, further down the line. And hopefully when the economy's recovered slightly, with it gradually reopening, which may put off some redundancies as well. So the main changes with the retention scheme, as you'll no doubt have seen anyway, is that from July, the employer will be expected and will have to contribute to the scheme 10%. So the government will cover 70%, and the employer will cover 10%, and that will then drop down in August and September to 60% contribution from the government, with the employer topping up the remaining 20% to make up that magic figure of 80 that we're all now used to. But a couple of statistics recently about the job retention scheme is that there's still 4.7 million people furloughed in January of this year. And as we know, the hospitality sector has been one of the biggest that's been hit throughout, and that sector attributed 1.15 million people within January that had been furloughed, which is no real surprise. Now, in terms of figures, by the middle of February, the total cost to the government, to the country, of the retention scheme is £53.8 billion. So that really shows the dependence that businesses have had, that the economy has had on the retention scheme throughout the COVID pandemic. And no real surprise, as well, as part of Rishi's announcements, was that he's putting in a lot of funding. He's committed another £100 million into a taxpayer protection task force, it is called, to basically go through claims that have been made under the retention scheme, to flush out those that are fraudulent and look to recover some money on behalf of the Treasury and the country as well, to ultimately reduce the debt and the total amount that we're all going to be paying back for a significant amount of time. The other element that I wanted to just pick up on in terms of the COVID element of the budget and impact on businesses was that the ability for small and medium-sized employers to reclaim 2 weeks of SSP, where the absence relates to COVID-19, has been extended. Now, there's not been a date as of yet set on when that temporary scheme will end. All that has been announced at the moment is that will continue to be extended, which again is more support for SMEs, which is good. The national living wage has not only been increased to £8.91 per hour, but it's also been extended for the first time to those that's 23 and above. So we're used to the national living wage only applying to 25 and above. That's now 23 and above. And as usual in April, the other national minimum wage rates have also increased, and that was announced as part of the budget. You've probably seen as part of the press, and certainly in Lincolnshire, there's been a lot of coverage and potentially a push for Lincolnshire to look at apprenticeships a lot more, and that the Chamber's been helpful in terms of promoting that and pushing that as well. Because it's a way that the government see of creating new jobs potentially for businesses, both by using the apprenticeship levy, but also really for smaller businesses to make the most of an opportunity with an apprentice as well. And what the government have said is that for each new apprentice that's hired between the start of April and the end of September, an employer will receive £3,000. So that's an increase from £2,000 that was previously announced, and now there's no age factor that needs to be taken into account on the apprentice that you take on. So again, it's more support from the government, and it's looking at creating jobs to help get the economy moving again. So they're really the main updates that I wanted to concentrate on, or really bring to your attention, that we got from the budget. Back to you, Simon.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Oliver. In terms of that one, I wonder if you could move over onto a specific issue now in terms of vaccinations and issues that employers may be facing in terms of the rollout of the vaccine programme. One particular area that has been mentioned is around no jab, no job. can you just expand on a little bit more in terms of what you've been hearing in terms of issues from employers?
We have that phrase, no jab, no job, you'll have seen come up in the press quite a bit. And we've actually seen some quite early announcements from a number of businesses in the last month or so, saying that they are going to have a requirement for new starters that they have to have had the COVID vaccination before they will be offered or be able to start a job. So we've seen that from Care UK. Now, Care UK are one of the biggest and largest care home operators within the UK. So you can see why their policy may be that you need to have had the COVID vaccination before you can start work within the care home environment, given the health implications and protection of patients, etc. So that one may be understandable and may be justifiable, and we'll get into the legal issues in a moment, really. Another business that announced that no jab, no job policy was Pimlico Plumbers. Now, Pimlico Plumbers and their owner, their chairman, Charlie Mullins, is really an employment lawyer's either nightmare if you're acting for them, or if you're acting for their employees, they're self-employed, allegedly plumbers, you're rubbing your hands when his name comes up. So he actually announced in January that they would be introducing that policy. So a very early statement from them, making vaccination a requirement of employment to join as a plumber within Pimlico. So really what a business needs to be doing is considering, well, what's the legal issues and what are the legal risks with adopting that approach, particularly in the way potentially that Pimlico Plumbers have gone about and been very public in relation to it as well. So really the bottom line is that no business can force an individual or an employee to have the vaccination. There's no legal provision that an employer can rely upon. And the government, in the mass rollout of the vaccinations, they're not stating that it's mandatory. So how an employer can expect to say to an employee it's mandatory, it's just not feasible or possible. So what the real issue is going to be, and what businesses are looking at, is, well, can you say to an employee, we're not going to be offering you a job unless you prove it, unless you have had a vaccination? And really, it all ties into health and safety obligations, and that's always in the background of this issue. And it's that requirement to have a safe working environment, which every employer has a duty to provide to their staff, against an individual's rights, and against, I suppose, the company wanting to maintain staffing levels by limiting the impact of COVID-19 and any absences as well. So there's two separate issues. One is around what can you do with potential new starters and new employees, and what are your options in terms of your current employees as well. So on the new starter perspective, if you're looking to take on new employees, new recruits, again, there's no formal government guidance on whether you can state no jab, no job. We've seen some government ministers state that have come out and stated in public that in theory, yes, it's possible. And as I say, we've seen Care UK, we've seen Pimlico Plumbers, we've seen Barchester Healthcare as well, which is another care home and health operator, which you can understand really why they're implementing that requirement. But ultimately, whether it's for a new employee or a current employee, we need to be aware of any potential discrimination elements to it. So for existing employees, we need to think about, well, what's the legal foundation, or what are the legal principles that we may be able to rely upon to say you need to have a jab to continue your employment? So firstly, is there an express clause in the contract of employment allowing it? I mean, the answer to that is going to be highly unlikely, and 99% of the time, no, there won't be any clause that you can rely upon. So could the term be implied into the contract of employment that you could ask an employee to get the jab? Again, it's unlikely. So the main area that employers are going to have to rely upon is that it's a reasonable management instruction for the employee to get the COVID vaccination. And whether that's going to be enough to rely upon is that, well, it will depend upon the circumstances. And that's something that employment lawyers say a lot. It's ultimately dependent upon the circumstances, and this area very much is fact dependent. But we'll go through each element so that you can see as a business what you would need to be able to satisfy and to demonstrate that you do have a reasonable management instruction for your staff to get the vaccine. So the first point is it's very much an untested area. We've never faced this before. We don't know what legal issues will really be raised by employees as we go through this. But the management instruction can be reasonable under certain circumstances. The first point to consider, really, is the working environment. Now, with the businesses that we've seen that have implemented or are going to implement the policy, they're going to have far easier justification on why they want their staff to have the jab, rather than, for example, a business, say Wilkin Chapman, operating in an office environment. So we need to think about the working environment. Is there interaction with colleagues, customers, patients for the healthcare sector? What's the employee's role? What's the business do? So again, vaccination for frontline healthcare workers is going to be far easier to justify than those within an office setting. It may be the case that there's an influence from third parties. So maybe if employees go to third-party sites and their requirement is that there has to be a vaccine, that may give you a reasonable management justification to have your employees encouraged to have the vaccination. But ultimately, you need to balance it against the individual rights and consider, are other COVID-19 measures sufficient to protect what you want to protect? So again, in an office setting, are your measures of creating a safe working environment, so spacing people out, having hand sanitizers everywhere, having regular cleaning, having this COVID-safe working environment, is that actually sufficient, rather than going to the higher level of saying, look, you need to be getting the COVID vaccine? And that's going to be the issue for businesses. So another area that we're going to see increasing as well is that, well, could you take disciplinary action potentially if an employee refuses that management instruction to get the COVID vaccination? Now, it should be the first automatic step, so you shouldn't go straight away as a business to say, well, we're going to take disciplinary action as a sanction and potentially look to dismiss you if you refuse to get the vaccine. It should be more about dialogue. Now, we've seen probably a lot of fake news in the press or within social media, shall we say, about the vaccine. We've seen lower uptake within the BAME community, probably within younger people as well. Potentially the stats are showing, and also some older people as well. And is that due to false information that may be out there? Now, one big area for businesses to do is probably promote the benefits to their staff of having the vaccine. So that positive promotion, probably a bit of education surrounding it as well, to stop any negativity that people may have towards the vaccine, whether it's false information about the side effects of it and what it actually means, what it may do to your body, government conspiracy, all of those things. It's best to have probably an educational piece from the employer first to say, look, these are the advantages, not only to you as individuals, to society, but to business in general. And really, a business can look to engage with individual employees. If you've got employee reps, maybe have trade unions as part of your workplace. You should involve everybody in that open dialogue. Now, one question that some employees may be concerned about is, A, will I be, if I have to have the vaccine during working hours, will it be paid time off? Will you support me in terms of that? And B, what will happen in terms of any absences as well that I may potentially have due to any side effects? And it's only when you start to have that dialogue with the employees that you see what the issues are, and perhaps you can reassure them on what your approach will be to, again, to support and encourage staff having the vaccine whether it's during working hours or not. Now, it may be the case if, as a business, you do need and you can see the benefit of having the vaccine for your staff and you can justify it, and if somebody refuses, that potentially you may be able to dismiss that individual. And that will ultimately boil down to the justification behind your reasonable management instruction for that employee to have it. And what a tribunal will look at there is A, the justification, and B, what we mentioned a moment ago, about, well, what other COVID-19 measures and steps could be taken to protect that individual as well, which we've mentioned. Can the employee work from home for a bit longer? Could they be redeployed to a different area of the business where they're not maybe coming into contact with fellow employees, colleagues, patients, if it's healthcare setting, customers? So really, it's looking at all other options before the ultimate sanction of dismissal is potentially taken, if you can justify it. Now, as I said, one big area that's going to crop up is potential discrimination. Because you're imposing or supporting a measure and a criteria to have the COVID vaccination, it's going to potentially be discriminatory against certain groups. So we've seen that for potential disabilities, medical advice may be that they shouldn't get the vaccine, in which case you're going to have difficulty in justifying why that individual should be vaccinated. Pregnancy as well, the medical guidance isn't entirely clear on whether a pregnant employee or an individual should be having the vaccine or not, really, because there's not enough medical evidence as of yet to say what the impact is. And I think it's really the individual's decision is what the medical guidance is at the moment. That may have changed now, so don't hold me to that. There may be religious or belief grounds on why that individual's refusing the vaccine. Age potentially is going to be a discriminatory factor. If you're saying that we will only offer a job with an individual being vaccinated, at the moment it's the higher age groups that have had the vaccine. So potentially younger candidates may lose out on the ability to apply for work, and that being discriminatory on the ground of age potentially. And there's also, we've seen a lot of anti-vaxxers, as they've been termed. Now, that's unlikely to be a belief itself under the Equality Act, but again, it's an area that's untested. So that shows you the potential, I suppose, discrimination risks that may arise following such a decision to implement the no jab, no job or continuation of job policy. And really the key battleground on those legal issues is going to be regarding the justification. So can it be objectively and proportionately justified that that's your stance as a business? And going back to the very beginning, it's going to be a lot easier to justify in a healthcare care home type environment where you're coming in contact with people, you're coming in contact with COVID-19 rather than an office setting. So message is, get advice, watch this space. It's an area that we're going to see grow and develop a lot as we go along, and employment practitioners are going to be extremely busy in the employment tribunal having these arguments. Simon.
Thank you, Oliver. One of my questions was going to relate to case law or tribunals in a second, but just taking you back there, I as an employer, I'm potentially offering some advice there to my employees that's outside my normal scope of knowledge. So I'm recommending that they take the vaccine as an option. I'm not a medical practitioner, but I'm strongly giving that recommendation to my employees. Should anything happen to one of those employees after they have been vaccinated, something is triggered off by the vaccination, where does that leave me?
Yeah, always qualify that type of it depends if it's a management instruction or not, but you always qualify it with, obviously, seek medical advice before you do make any decision. It's not passing the buck to an extent, but you're qualifying what your statement is, certainly.
Perfect. Okay, lovely. Thank you for that clarification. So next question was around tribunals, and if there's so far been any tribunals or rulings or any takeaways from current cases that would be handy to explain to people who are listening at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my day-to-day queries at the minute are from the businesses that have either continued to operate throughout and are maybe trying to get a few more people back, or the businesses that are planning to get people back and maybe have started to communicate that with their employees, and they're being met, shall we say, with resistance, or people saying that they don't feel safe or that they should be obliged to return. So that's a lot of what businesses are asking me is, well, what do we do in that situation at the minute? And we've actually had already 2 employment tribunal case decisions on similar points, and both relate to COVID dismissals, and we'll touch upon those shortly. But if we take a step back on an employee refusing to return to work, A, what's their legal protection? And B, as the employer, as the business, what options do you have as well to look to mitigate that risk? And then we'll look at one case decision that we've had already from the Leeds Employment Tribunal within the last week or so that really builds on those legal principles, as you'd expect. So, I mean, the concerns with COVID are still live, and employees are probably across every business. Every business will have at least one individual, won't you, where they'll say, look, I don't feel safe coming back in, no matter what measures you've put in place. And each business will have one, no doubt about it. So legally, what are the legal rights, and what are we going to be looking at in terms of those individuals? Well, firstly, an individual has the right not to be subjected to any detriment, detriment being subjected to a disadvantage because they've raised health and safety concerns, i.e. COVID, and this area is all going to be around whether they had a reasonable belief of serious and imminent danger because of COVID-19. And we'll look at those words in a moment. So A, an individual can't be subjected to a detriment because of that, so that treatment. Secondly, it's also an automatic unfair dismissal claim, so there's no need to have been employed for 2 years like normal for an unfair dismissal claim, if that individual has been dismissed for their refusal to return to work based on the fact that they considered the danger to be serious and imminent. So the key parts really are A, that reasonable belief that the employee has, and secondly, the serious and imminent danger. Now, with these claims, both with detriment and the automatic unfair dismissal, the burden of proof rests on the employee. So they have to show and prove to the tribunal the circumstances that they considered to be the danger and what they believed reasonably to be serious and imminent. Now, what it doesn't ultimately matter if it transpires that that belief wasn't accurate, so if that belief in the serious and imminent danger wasn't correct, it's whether it's reasonable at the time. Now, the principle of dangers, again, it's really an untested area, but the tribunals are likely to really interpret it quite widely to give as much protection as possible to employees. And what's helpful in a way to employees is that the health protection regulations, so that set out all the law in terms of the coronavirus and the COVID restrictions, specifically lists COVID-19 as a serious and imminent threat to public health. So it shows that the government are acknowledging that it is a serious and imminent threat, as you'd expect. So the main issue is really going to be whether that individual had the reasonable belief that the danger was serious and imminent. And this is where our first case will come in a moment. So COVID-19, absolutely serious. Now, whether the risk itself of COVID-19 is serious within the workplace, remember we're talking about the workplace rather than the wider society in general under these claims, will depend on a multitude of factors, and really, has the employer, what steps has the employer done to mitigate those risks? So We've been speaking over the last year about measures that should be put into workplaces with distancing, hand sanitizing, protective screens, PPE potentially as well, risk assessments being carried out. So the risk can be mitigated by taking those steps as well. Now, probably all workplaces are never going to be entirely risk-free, are they? But it's about demonstrating that you've taken reasonable steps as a business to counter any risks that you have within the workplace. And reliance upon those risk assessments will also be key. We've also seen locally, as well as nationally, health and safety executive are doing on-the-spot inspections, and the reports that they produce as well after those, they may say that all the steps you've taken are great and fantastic. And again, that's something that as a business you can look to rely upon when you're saying to an employee, look, we're doing everything that we possibly can to protect you, and the HSE agree with that as well. But really what the employer needs to be doing is to explain the steps that they've taken to mitigate the risks clearly to the employee. So if you have an employee that comes to you, say, look, I don't feel safe to return, and these are my issues, then it's explaining and communicating verbally and in writing the steps that you've taken to mitigate that, to fully demonstrate why it's reasonable for that employee to come back to the workplace. One big area is if an employee does refuse to return to work, should they be paid or not? So on the one hand, you've got an employee that's not ready, willing and able to work, which they should be, against the fact that they're raising health and safety concerns. And this is potentially where the detriment claims are going to come in. If you subject that employee to an unpaid period of leave, if they're refusing to come back in, they may argue, well, that's a detriment because I've raised health and safety concerns. And again, the strength of that claim is going to be dependent on how good your communication has been as the business. So if an employee raises the fact that they're refusing to return, dismissal can be warranted, and that's something that we're going to get to with this particular case in particular. And really, as long as the employer's followed all guidance that they need to have done in terms of risk assessments, carrying those out, following them through, creating a safe working environment, which is communicated to all the staff and employees, and any employees in particular that are refusing to come back to the workplace, then really the tribunal sympathy is going to be limited, because they know and they support that business needs to continue to run, and we need to get the economy back going again as businesses. So as long as you as a business follow those steps, you're going to have a very good defence to any claims for automatic unfair dismissal on those grounds. I'll mention the case very briefly as well at this point, Simon, if that's okay. Like I say, it came from the Leeds Employment Tribunal. It was either last week or the week before, so very recent, which is great. And this involved exactly what we've been speaking about. It was an individual that had been employed for less than 2 years, so can't bring a normal claim for unfair dismissal. He alleged that he'd been dismissed for raising the fact that he didn't feel safe within the workplace and therefore refused to carry on working. And in particular, because he had a child at home that had an underlying health condition and should have been shielding. So he said he didn't feel safe in the working environment, particularly because of that child at home. And that's certainly an area that I think businesses need to expect a lot, and certainly what maybe I've been advising businesses on throughout is that an employee says, I don't want to come to work, I don't want to travel to work because I live with my parents, they're old, they're vulnerable, they've not been vaccinated yet, or my brother's sister's friend lives with us, so he's also clinically should be shielding, therefore I'm not going to return to work. So this is a very topical case, as you can expect, on whether that's reasonable or not. Now, what the tribunal did was say that his claim in fact failed. And what they found was that A, they didn't believe that there was a serious and imminent threat to serious and imminent threat of danger, within the workplace. And they methodically went through every measure that the employer had put into place in that factory, in that workplace setting, on risk assessments and measures that they put in place, and found that they were all reasonable and they protected employees' health and safety. They also found that the claimant's concerns weren't, in fact, which came down to witness evidence, relating to the workplace. What they related to was more the society risk of COVID-19, and in particular the risk to his child, who was required to shield. So because it didn't relate to the workplace in reality, and because the employer had taken all measures that they needed to do to mitigate any risks, the claim from that individual was dismissed and didn't succeed. So that shows that tribunals will, like I say, methodically go through what the employer has done, but they will drill down on that employee's, on that individual's belief, and whether it is reasonable under the circumstances and whether it relates to the workplace or not. Simon.
Thanks for that again. Just as a reminder, if anybody would like to raise any direct questions, please put them in the chat, and we're more than happy to come over to you to answer any direct questions. Just one to take you back, instead of vaccination, testing. So some employers will find it beneficial to have their staff tested on a more regular basis. And of course, there's a risk then in terms of, if I'm an employee, if I get a notification that I am a positive test, then I'll have to stop working. There could be an impact in terms of my salary, etc. to that. Can employers insist on a testing regime, a specific frequency of testing happening in the workplace? And if so, what might that look like?
Well, from a legal sense, the same issues arise with implementing and imposing a testing regime as they do on the factors that are discussed about a vaccination policy as well. So you cannot force, and an employer cannot force an employee to undertake tests. We've seen, haven't we, recently, that the government have extended testing support now. I think any size of business can order testing kits, which is really positive step to get the testing out there and with the workplace. And that really works to help, obviously stop the spread of the virus, get anybody that's not displaying any symptoms out of the workplace and the risk of spreading. But also it can give employees confidence, can't it, on returning to the workplace. So whether that's an office workplace setting, whether it's a manufacturing, a factory setting or otherwise, it really gives that confidence that employers are doing everything that they possibly can in terms of their obligations for the health and safety of staff by doing testing and everything that brings. But short answer is no, a business unfortunately cannot still impose that requirement on an employee, because it is an employee's own decision whether they want to be tested as well as vaccinated ultimately. So exactly the same principles apply as before, and it will be surrounding the justification of imposing that reasonable management instruction to be tested on whether you could look to take disciplinary action or not. Now, what I would say, and been advising clients, is that in reality, testing is going to be easier to justify potentially, both from a discrimination element, but also a general reasonable management and instruction and a disciplinary action because of the refusal and potential dismissal, than what it would be potentially on refusal to vaccinate and therefore employ or continue to employ. It'd be interesting to hear from people as well that have either maybe got a policy on testing, certainly at the minute, and how that has been going, and whether they've had staff refuse and on what basis and how they've dealt with that. And also if any organisations are in fact thinking of imposing anything in terms of vaccinations. I've been helping a lot of education settings in terms of testing, So prior to setting up for the testing of pupils a couple of weeks ago for people to come back in, was helping them with the testing of staff to start to set that up and get that going, and supporting them with issues around that. But yeah, it's certainly be interesting to hear from anybody if anybody did want to contribute on if you've had any issues as an employer with any testing that you've implemented at all.
Okay, so if you have, please just put a note in the chat box. We can share those with others, or we can respond to a particular issue that you've got there. Whilst just giving people opportunity to do so, maybe just to recap on some of the other workforce type planning challenges, issues, things that you need to get right in terms of where we are and what we've been through. So I'm aware organisations will still have individuals who weren't able to take many holidays last year. Would you just run over for us the position that an organisation is in if an individual wasn't able to take over the full amount of holidays they were due in the last year?
Yeah, we've seen this a lot really, and with people's, I mean, a lot of businesses' holiday years are at the end of the financial year. Ours included at Wilkin Chapman, our holiday year ends next week, and there's certainly issues within clients as well, that people trying to squeeze in their annual leave, perhaps reluctant to take annual leave because still at the minute we can't do anything with that annual leave apart from go for walks and have takeaways. So the option open to the business is that they can agree to carry over up to 4 weeks annual leave for the next 2 years. But remember that that's an employer's decision on whether to look to implement that or not. But really the message is to plan holidays with staff and to notify them and tell them, look, you need to be taking a set amount by set dates. If you don't, tough luck, basically. So that's the proactive approach of managing that, really, and a good way of doing it. Yeah, a lot of businesses just haven't been able to take it as well because they've been busy on the flip side, which is a positive outcome from all of this.
So have businesses decided that you're working with to pay for some of those holidays as such?
Yeah, there's been a mixed approach. So some have decided to buy back any holidays that legally it has to be over and above the statutory minimum holidays. So anything above over 28 days could be bought back. Some businesses are doing that as well as agreeing to carry over. Or some are being the more proactive, look, you need to have taken it by the end of the holiday year or tough luck.
I'm going to move on to clinically extremely vulnerable shielding, which is due to end shortly. Position on that in terms of what next?
Yeah, so it's been confirmed that the clinically extremely vulnerable will no longer have to shield, and that stops as of the 1st of April. It also, the consequence of that as well is that they will no longer be eligible for SSP if they continue to shield, which is one thing, and similar benefits because of that. So that's also going to cease as of the end of this month. Everybody's been sent a letter to state basically that everyone's still been advised to work from home where possible and to continue that if at all feasible. But if not, then you should go to work. So it is like that overnight that they can potentially return to work. And I've had some clients that have been contacted by those individuals that have been desperate to return as well. They're desperate to come back to be reintegrated within the workplace and get going again. So it's just one area to be aware of, and certainly from a planning sense as well.
Okay, so I've got a question from John, one of which is in terms of asking employees to give information about vaccines. I wonder, John, if I open your microphone, I wonder if you just articulate both of those points, and we'll get Oliver to answer those directly. So hopefully your microphone, if you click on mute.
There we go. Hello.
Perfect. Go.
Hi, John.
Hi there, hi there. I'm not sure I can articulate it particularly well, but never mind.
Go for it.
Yeah, as I put in the chat, we have asked people to let us know when they are vaccinated. We feel it's information that's useful to us, particularly to help us decide when, you know, as I've put, have our own roadmap out of restrictions, I guess.
Yeah.
Obviously, concerns that to a certain extent that's somebody's personal information regarding their health. You know, are we restricted by actually holding that information? Can we make somebody tell us they've had the vaccination?
So yeah, as you say, because it relates to health, it would be classed as that sensitive personal information and sensitive personal data under the data protection regs. So what that means is that, well, firstly, what GDPR and data protection regs state is that you should carry out a data protection impact assessment and statement, and really the justification for collecting that data, which you can justify in terms of, again, protecting employees and individuals' health and safety within the workplace, to create your own business roadmap out to get people back as well. But you'd need to at least have the paper trail that you've carried out that impact assessment, that you've notified people as well that it is classed as sensitive personal data, and therefore they don't have to agree to the collection of that data or not. But again, it's just that encouragement that it's for the benefit of everybody to protect people's health and safety and get people back, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I agree.
And again, with any medical information, it's about considering how long you need to store that information in line with your usual practices as well on medical information, and about the justification for that retention period of it.
And then my follow-up question, and I'll put about your crystal ball out here, Ollie. You know, we're in an office environment, as you know, and still predominantly working from home. We've got a shift pattern, you know, whilst social distancing, it continues to be a concept. Any idea? What's your gut feeling about when maybe social distancing might end so all of us can get back into the office at the same time?
Yeah, I lose track of with the roadmap and exactly what season at one point, apart from when the pubs reopen. But in June, isn't that when they're saying that potentially all such restrictions will or should come to an end? Is that right?
I think so. And whether that applies to social distancing, I'm not sure. But
yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't know if you can, Simon. Can you? No. But say, for example, that it does say in June that they hope to be in a position to ease all such measures. That will also apply to the workplace. But from what's been said in the media, what ministers are stating, what Chris Whitty's stating, and the medical team, is that I think we're going to be living with certain recommendations, aren't we, for a long time to come. So whether that's maintain distance if possible, in out and about and within enclosed environments, or if that's wearing face masks in certain areas. So I think from a business perspective, you'll still be expected, and it would be positively encouraged, certainly from an advice side, to maintain up-to-date risk assessments, to say that you are going to continue with measures such as sanitising, cleaning, spaced out where possible, to mitigate the risk of COVID spreading. So I think in reality, as businesses, we're going to have to get used to it as being commonplace for a long time to come.
Yeah, and I guess alongside that, everybody having at least their first dose, all adults having their first dose, those two things combined in theory would give us a way forward, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some positivity, isn't there? There's positivity out there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Flippantly, the important date to me is the April the 12th date we go to the hairdressers. I know it's for a not very manly thing to say, but my goodness me, when they're open, so much the better.
You'll be queuing, Simon.
I probably will, but socially distanced queuing, no doubt. Nicola, you've raised an excellent point. I know you said no issues, but I think it just illustrates how businesses are trying to focus on situations. Could I just get you to open your mind, just explain the situation you've got at the moment, and just inform the rest of how you're dealing with things?
Okay, so we're a community nursing team. So obviously we've worked all the way through this, and just picking up on what John said about getting everybody back in the office. We have been in the office all the way through this. So we've already put in place the screens, the wiping downs, the masks, the hand gels at various spaces, the regularly going through the office and shouting 2 meters, 2 meters, just to make sure that everybody's doing that social distancing. But we've only just introduced the lateral flow tests back in February, and it wasn't very well received. However, we've had guidance out now that says that it's mandatory for somebody to have a COVID test before they go into a care home. So in the last week alone, I think I've issued about 48 lateral flow boxes, because it gave me and I put power there. I don't like using the word power, but it gave me the ammunition to sort of say, actually, I think we're going to have to make this mandatory, and everybody's jumped on board. The biggest issue we've had is around vaccine, and we did send out guidance that says the NHS strongly recommend that all healthcare staff have the COVID vaccine. As a management team, we are requesting that you have this. And I did get a grievance put in because it breached somebody's human rights. But because of all the evidence we had, we were able to sort of say, well, actually, that's unfound, because we didn't force anybody to do anything. And I think it's about how you term it. But it's so difficult because there is no definitive answers on anything. It is all guidelines, and what you read one day, I found this a lot over the last year, 2 days later it could say something completely different. So it's just very, very difficult just navigating through it.
Definitely, and yeah, commended for what you've had to be doing as well throughout COVID-19, continuing to work in the sector that you're in, and all the difficulties and challenges that's no doubt brought for you as well. But yeah, one point on you saying that the guidelines change, and often the guidance that you find on the guidelines is either not clear, rather grey, or you can find areas that contradict, or different advice notes that contradict each other as well, unfortunately. And yeah, with the NHS, they're the same, aren't they? That they are not, and the government aren't saying it's mandatory for NHS staff to have the COVID vaccine at all, because it is an individual's decision whether or not they want to do so, and including testing. But yeah, interestingly, you say now that perhaps the mindset's changed slightly from individuals on getting the lateral flow tests. And it's that ties in nicely with the communication piece that I mentioned earlier on, about maybe educating staff on what the benefits, advantages are of the approach and why you're looking to do it.
Absolutely, and it's having that communication, and very early, straight away, we put in a COVID risk assessment, so everybody was aware of what the expectations were, and every time it's reviewed they get a copy and we speak to them. And originally, with regards to the vaccine as well, we had very, very low take up on it. I think we only had like 65% take up, but in the last 4 weeks we're now at 91% take up. So it's about allowing them that time to think about it, and so it's getting the information out quick, letting them think about it, do the research, and then come back and take that decision themselves.
Yeah, that's really positive, isn't it? 91% uptake now. That's brilliant, and will only serve to protect them, and then with all the settings that you're going into as well within that working environment. And it probably ties in, doesn't it, with the fact that they've seen that we're up to 22 million, nearly, aren't we, with the amount of people that have been vaccinated, and that positivity piece that's being displayed, and that we're all in it to help each other almost, aren't we?
Absolutely, and I don't think anybody wants to be the person responsible for bringing COVID into the workplace or infecting a patient or a friend or a family member or anything. So, you know, it's all quite positive, but it is, yeah, it's like a minefield some days.
Definitely, and particularly where an individual's response, as you've seen, is to raise a grievance in response, which is if you would hope that people would be able to address it informally by raising concerns with you on a verbal, let's have a meet and discussion way. But unfortunately, it's what businesses are going to be facing, is the official grievance being raised on the basis of either, yeah, it's my personal decision whether I want that or not, or B, it's certainly health and safety issues that are being raised, and then unfortunately some claims may follow that. But that communication, as you say, is going to be key to cut that off and to support the steps that you're putting in place as the employer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah, thank you too, Nicola. That's really helpful in terms of bringing that particular part to life. Thank you for sharing that with us. We've got 4 minutes. Oliver, I've just got one final question. If anybody else has got anything else to put in the chat quickly, and we might be able to get there. But my final question is on the job retention scheme and the future. Do you mind just running over how that runs out, or how that's likely to play out at the current time?
Yeah, so at the end of September is when the Chancellor's confirmed it's been extended to. And I mean, when it was extended till April, a lot of clients were planning for the end of that and what that may mean on their workforce. So really, I've mentioned in previous webinars as well on ChamberConnect webinars, is that carry out your workforce planning sooner rather than later with that end date in mind. If unfortunately your business is going to continue to be impacted, maybe from an adverse perspective, meaning you may have to look to restructure and make redundancies. So yeah, earlier the planning, the better, really, to be in the best position possible.
Fantastic. And that's nearly an hour gone. So thank you very much, Oliver. At this point, there's no more questions in the chat, so I'm going to bring things to a close there. Super insightful again, absolutely fantastic in terms of the coverage that we've had, and we hope that gives those who are listening today a new, an improved and a wider perspective of what's happening at the current time. Before I finally wrap up, there's just a couple of things to mention to you in terms of Chamber of Commerce, making sure that you're aware of different things that could be appropriate to you. There is a grant at the moment available from Lincolnshire County Council. It's called the Invest for Future grant. It could be worth between £25,000 and £75,000 and contribute towards any business expansion plans that you're undertaking at this particular time. It does close on Friday the 26th of March. So if you are planning on expansion, you've got some capital expenditure to undertake, that might be helpful in terms of supporting those plans. Lastly, I'd like to mention that we, Lincolnshire Chamber, have a leadership and wellbeing hub. So on our website, www.links-chamber.co.uk, we've got advice, we've got information, but we've also got some free resources in terms of being able to speak directly to other experts on wellbeing and issues that you may be facing directly with your workforce or yourself personally at this time. So have a look on there, particularly if there are stresses and strains because of COVID related issues. There's definitely help and support available, and some of that is definitely free of charge to Lincolnshire based businesses as well. So just a plug for Oliver, if you'd like to contact him, Twitter handle OT Employment Law at OT Employment Law. I'd like to say again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you very much to Oliver. I hope you all have a really productive rest of the week, and we look forward to you participating in future ChamberConnect events as well. Thank you for now, and bye-bye.